Hello and welcome to Legally Consumed, a consumer products podcast by a consumer products law firm in Australia. I'm Raf Goldenberg and I'm joined by co-hosts Kay Ho and Will McMinn, who are members of the team at CIE Legal.
We chat with executives of consumer products companies, their legal teams and industry experts who give us a peek into their journeys as people. We explore industry-changing ideas and even share tips and tricks on how to navigate the consumer products space.
This season, we will feature guests from the automotive, retail, advertising and insights, food, beverage, and primary production and franchising sectors.
Welcome to another episode of the Legally Consumed podcast. Today, we're joined by Samantha Johnson and Kay Ho, my co-host. Samantha is the Managing Director of Polestar Automotive Australia, and Polestar is a new player in the Australian automotive market and sells electric cars only. It's a very cool company. I'll let Samantha talk a little bit more about it. But firstly, I really just want to say thank you for Samantha for joining us. We did have a go and recorded a podcast, I think in Sydney, probably a month or two ago. And afterwards we had some technical issues. So Samantha's been very kind to come back and to join us. So welcome, Samantha.
Raf, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me along.
Thank you for coming. We'll talk a lot about Polestar and what makes it different soon, but it'd be good just to start off hearing about your personal journey and, things you've done along the way before you got here. And I'll start with a question about your first job. What was your first ever job?
My first job was in the mailroom of Ernst and Young, which is actually Ernst and Winnie back then, and then it merged with Arthur Young. And so I started in the mailroom, and my boss didn't like doing all the accounting work, so all the accounts, so I started helping her with that. And then a position came up in the accounts team, and then I moved up, and then I did my studies, and I just sort of worked my way into a great family company that I worked with for 6 years, and started as a sort of junior credit controller, worked my way up to be their financial controller. And we went from a small business with one office to a national business looking after all big ASX firms. So it was very exciting. I learned a lot. When you start with a small company, you learn every part of it, which is a really good foundation for then, when you go into a big company, you understand how everything runs.
Yeah, sounds. So you were studying at uni whilst you were doing this?
Yes, I was. Yeah, studying at Monash Uni down here in Melbourne. Yeah, it was really exciting times, and so it was very difficult when it came to end of financial year. You'd be putting board reports together, you'd be doing exams and assignments and everything all at the same time. So it was a pretty busy time.
Pretty full on. And I know that you spent some time overseas, didn't you? And you had some interesting adventures before you kind of ended up back in Australia. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, well, my mum was living over in Hong Kong, working in some of the international schools. So when I finished my studies, and I went over there and worked for a couple of really interesting companies there. One was a promotional premiums company. So they make your, McDonald's Happy Meal little,
toys and
little
things.
Toys and all that sort of your Coca-Cola umbrellas and bottles and anything to do with like merchandising and promotional premiums. They did that, which was really, really interesting. They won the FIFA World Cup many, many years ago. So they restructured the company to handle that World Cup that was coming along in 4 years' time. So that was really interesting going through that sort of turnaround. I worked at another company there that was manufactured all the big posters that you see around Hong Kong and Japan, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all the fashion posters. So we were like the market leader in that product. And then they took over a Japanese company and started up over there. And it was originally a local Hong Kong company, got sold to a UK multinational. So they had all this expansion. So I got sent over to Japan for 3 months to put in this ERP system that I'd never heard of before. I had never really worked with manufacturing directly system, implementing new systems before. So, and only 2 people spoke English, which were the systems consultants. So it was very interesting. But we did it. I had my little Palm Pilot at the time. Yeah, one it was. And we just every day from like 5 a.m. to like 11 o'clock at night just powered through all of these things that had to be done. And you know what? It was just, it had to be done, and we got there. And it was funny coming to the go live meeting at the end, because no one says anything because the boss is there. So
yeah, right.
it was, you all happy to go live? You're all ready? Everything else, pure silence. Yeah. So anyway, so it was very interesting, but learned a lot. It was a great experience being in Hong Kong and in Japan. And but then it got to the stage where my husband and I said, it's time to head back to Australia. So we'd been living on a boat a yacht for a couple of years and doing a lot of racing in Hong Kong. So we decided to sail our boat back to Australia.
Oh, wow.
Amazing. So tell us a little bit about that trip.
Oh, look, I love planning for it. I spent 3 months literally. I had my husband who was experienced. Also had my best friend's boyfriend who was a yacht master. So he loved sticking his head into diesel mechanics. He was an engineer, so he could sail really well. He'd been out in like horrendous conditions, and he knew his way around engines. So so he helped me with all the like safety planning, the equipment and everything, getting us prepared. We had to have all the food planned out, the fuel, the water, where we were going to stop. It had to be warm the whole way everywhere, and no cyclones, typhoons or anything like that. So we had to time where we went and when. And just making sure that you had the spares for the mechanics if things went wrong. Because we
can't just drop in and call for it.
And that did happen. So so we went through the Philippines, spent a month there with friends and family and just people coming on and off. And there's a lot of diving, and there were some great experiences there. And then we went to Papua New Guinea for a month, spent time around there, and then we came into Cairns and spent a month in Cairns and a month in the Whitsundays. But when we were coming out of the Philippines, there's this strait of water called Surigao Strait, and it could run at 8 knots, which is about the maximum that our boat could go with the motor on. So we were told, we had the tide, the local tides printed out and told us when the slack tide was. It's a good time to head through. But then there was a small cruise boat in at the harbour. So we asked the captain there, we said, can you just verify? And he said, no, it's totally different. Well, what do we do? Do I trust him or do we trust the written? So we trusted the written. We just went for the written because that is, explicit and from a marine authority. And we went through, and this strait literally has whirlpools and eddies. And when I say whirlpools, that was the size of the boat, which is 40 foot. But it was just a mess of a round circle of water, and you would go onto it and you just have no steering. You just have to sort of come out the other end. And our Morse cable went, which is the gear cable. So we couldn't get the boat into gear going down this strait. So I was heading in one direction and we were going sideways in another direction. So I had to steer in a totally different direction to where we were going, where the current was taking us. I had to sail while to get us to where we needed to go, while my husband and this other fellow, one underneath and one up top, getting this Morse cable, gear cable, from down in the engine up to the gear lever up the top in the cockpit, and testing it and making sure it all works. So I was just sailing while this was all going on. And so that was sort of one adventure. That was all fun. We spat out the other end and we were all okay. But there were lots of things that happened in different places. We had between Papua New Guinea and Cairns, the steering went. One of the bolts, something came loose. So we had to put instead of the big round steering wheel, which has a lot of different sort of, what would you call it, levers, so that you don't have to use much weight. We had to use an emergency tiller, which is this big stick, which is like trying to move an elephant. And so we had to put that. I had to do that and steer the boat while again the guys were going up and down trying to get the steering fixed. So, but we had spares for everything. We had tested the steering out before we left. It was just about making sure you had your risk covered. Yeah. And we did that. And we were okay. But and there's lots of other adventures that happened.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
So how long was it from Hong Kong, and was it Sydney Harbour yourself?
Yeah, 9 months. You could do it in 6 weeks if you wanted to, but we spent 9 months. When we left Cairns, we just literally hopped down the coast, spent a month in the Whitsundays, and met a best friend on the way in her boat. So
cool.
that's been really good. And then, we came down into Sydney, into Homebush Marina, I think it is, in Pittwater. And we finally got a home into it, and we lived there for a little while before we got jobs and became responsible.
Yeah. And talking about responsible, so from there, how did you kind of find your way into Polestar?
Yeah, well, I ended up, I got a job with Harley Davidson. And I remember being offered the role and thinking, what does that mean, Harley Davidson? Is it sort of an old-fashioned traditional company, or is it something more exciting? And they're actually doing some really innovative things, and it was a real opportunity to join something where you're part of the new growth.
Yeah.
And so it was literally 4 of us as a startup in Australia in a shared office in Lindfield in Sydney, because the distributorship was held with 3 large dealer groups. So what we did is we took over as the manufacturer's distributor, and there's quite a period to go through there, and literally built it up to be, maybe 40, 50 people, 50 dealership network, Australia and New Zealand. It's quite substantial, and we just grew. We set up ERP systems, and then moved offices a couple of times to sort of a bespoke office, and a lot of different experiences. But I was always really interested in what happened on the dealership side, and the profitability was something I'm always interested in working with. And so there was an opportunity that came up in the sales team and looking after the dealership network, and also looking after sales. So I took that on for a couple of years, which was great, because they wanted me to bring structure to that team. So it was about how we could best get everyone working together within the team, and also with the other teams more collaboratively, and getting them to go out and be really constructive around, right, here's your dealer dashboard, these are the KPIs, where is a dealership sitting, these are the opportunities where you can improve, let us help you in how you can do that. It might be digital marketing, how can we have a better customer journey, how can we connect with our customers a bit more on social media rather than just posting, actually interact with them, and a lot of other things. So we put in place a lot of really good things. We grew really well during that time. It was very, very interesting. Got some great experience. And then, I went when I left there, I got a role with Volvo. So again, I went in as a business controller there. And then, they didn't have a retail finance and insurance, which I'd always worked with at Harley. And so I said, look, we really need to set up a team here. So we started that, and we built up the finance partner and GFE product and the whole online journey, because that wasn't there at that time. And took on digital transformation as well, because we were starting that journey. And so I hired the fellow who came in and sort of, worked with that project and helped to get that off the ground to start on that project. So, and my managing director at the time at Volvo was the ex-CEO of Polestar in Sweden. So we started working with Polestar, and that's where that opportunity came up for me to move across. And I'd had broad experience in all different areas, and I really was really interested in that online space, doing things different, more the digital marketing side of and working with EVs as well, more sustainable. It's just a very enticing invitation.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about the history of the Polestar brand?
Yeah, so it started as a racing brand, and then Volvo had a partnership with Volvo, and then Volvo bought Polestar and made it part of its a product range. So you would buy maybe a V60 or an S60 Volvo, and you could have Polestar engineered. So it would come out of the factory with pipes and accessories and software and other things to make it a little bit more hotted up than the traditional cars. So we had that for a while, and there still is sort of Polestar engineered like software, or Polestar software, but Volvo no longer makes the Polestar engineered cars, so it's just Volvo. But what they found is they were making this car, and the design team, and they realized this is not really a Volvo. It's something more exciting. It's something different. And so they decided to, take Polestar out of Volvo and make it into a separate brand altogether. So they did that, and and they've it's been growing ever since. So you have so it's owned by Geely and Volvo Car Group, and then you have the two different brands, Volvo Car and Polestar Cars, very very separate brands. So Polestar stands for very much the design, innovation, and sustainability are our core pillars. Sustainability being absolutely number one in everything that we do. When we design a car, has to be sustainable, and the innovation helps us with, innovation, safety, connected car, and sustainability.
And how does Polestar Australia fit into that? Like, how big are the operations here? What does Polestar do?
Well, here we started live in February this year, live with sales. And it's been very exciting. We had a really good sort of backlog of customers who were just really keen to get started in a Polestar. And we went through quite a lot of interesting time going live and getting things right, because you have everything tested and planned out, but nothing ever goes exactly to plan. So we had a bit of learning, and we had to work with partners and work with Global on improving and escalating different areas. So we did all of that. But now we've got, at the end of last month, we had 1,200 cars on the road, which is we're pretty impressed with that.
Since then?
Since February, yeah. So, the logistics, everything to be able to, and the retail locations to be able to deliver at that with a high quality as well. And we still are learning. There still are things that sometimes, you've got to still improve on. But I think there are some very happy customers out there. I think we've gotten to a very good stage now, and opening up Chadstone is kind of, we've done really well to get to where we are now. This is now the next level, because we are moving from, the Polestar 2. In a year's time, we're going to have the Polestar 3 large SUV, and then Polestar 4 mid-size SUV and more products after that. So we need to sort of now move up to that next level, and Chadstone's really going to show that level of luxury is really shifting up. And we're going to be expanding our retail network into sort of more luxury locations.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you launched a new automotive business from scratch in less than a year. Could you tell us a bit more about the process and the challenges you faced?
Absolutely. Well, it's actually been about 2 years. So one from start of sales has all been this year, and there's been a lot that we've done this year. But last year, I literally started on my own at home because it was COVID, and working with the headquarter teams on, they've got really very well qualified and experienced teams in every single area. So you think of, logistics, after sales, marketing, e-commerce, finance, and a lot more, PR. There's all these different departments, and I just, met with them every week going through steps in the project and what needed to be done. Brought the team on board, the leadership team on board, and then they brought their teams on board. And we had events, PR events that we had to launch with media during COVID. So we couldn't do the big events, big sustainability events we wanted to do. So we had to individually, send a car to a reporter's location, and with, the experience that went with that, and do it all individually rather than what we would usually do, getting everyone together and taking them somewhere. So you had to really adapt and just do things differently and make things work. But it's amazing on what you can do and what you can achieve when you are in a situation. You just adapt.
I mean, it sounds great, and the car's great. Like I had a test drive of the Polestar 2 a while ago with my wife, and it was just an incredible experience. Sort of the one pedal driving in particular, just kind of getting used to the fact that there's just one pedal to brake and accelerate, but just and the power and the performance was just amazing. So as a car, it feels fantastic. Can you tell us a bit? You're talking about sustainability before, and for you guys, that's obviously one of your pillars. But can you talk a little bit about how that manifests itself sort of through the life cycle of the car?
So Polestar has 4 drivers of sustainability. It's climate neutrality, transparency, circularity, and inclusion. So within that, so the climate neutrality, we're talking about having a climate neutral vehicle by 2030, halving our emissions, the company overall, by 2030, and then by 2040 having a climate neutral company in everything that we do, and every car that comes off the production line. So that's sort of the carbon neutrality drivers. But then you've got the transparency, which is about having a life cycle assessment report, which we publish and provide the methodology to everyone in the industry, that shows us where the Polestar 2 is now compared to an equivalent petrol engine. And if you're just using energy off the grid, it's less emissions, sizably less emissions than an equivalent petrol engine or petrol car. If you're using renewable energy, it's less than half of the emissions. So you buy a Polestar 2 like right now, it's less than half the emissions, and it's going down each year because we're making it more sustainable than a petrol engine. So it's definitely worthwhile. But we look at that and we say, okay, well, that's we're being very transparent about where we are now, but we're saying, being electrification is only the beginning. We have to do more and get that the emissions that are remaining down to zero. So that's where we use that to guide us on where we go. We use blockchain technology to source risk minerals like cobalt. Might use it to source mica, and also leathers. So leather is an option in our cars, but the leather is a byproduct of meat, and also there's no animal cruelty, and that's all certified. So that's where we use blockchain technology where we can to really, make sure that we're doing all the right things there. Circularity, which is another driver of our sustainability, is about making your cars last as long as possible. So using more highly durable products that last longer, but still having over-the-air software updates so your cars can still improve on range and stay relevant. You've got, making your the car to be able to be repurposed as much as possible, all the components. So let's say it ends up in a dismantling yard. All the components that pass a quality test can go back through the new car manufacturing process without a new carbon footprint. And so, so it's about being able to reuse those parts or repurpose those parts. And those that don't pass the test can go into parts workshops. You're looking at batteries and making sure that they can be repurposed as much as possible. They might not, after the end of life of the car, they might not be able to be used for the car anymore, but they can be a battery for maybe a home or a solar-powered charging station, or broken apart and used as to electronic goods or something else. So there's a lot being built into it. So it's about sort of, lasting longevity, serviceability, more easily able to get to all the different components and adjust and detach, and repurposing, recycling. We use a lot of natural products in our cars. So in the cars now, but in the future cars will be even more so, like flax being used in natural products instead of, hard plastics on the insides. Recycled PET bottles, recycled fishing nets, cork. Our aluminium is labelled so it can be recycled more easily at the end. So what else do we have?
What do you make out of the recycled? Like, what part of the car comes out of the recycled bottles, for example?
Oh, the seat.
The seat.
Seat molds.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Yeah, and when we use fibres to make some of these seats, we it's one sort of fibre, so there's no wastage at the end. We have seats, different seats, because there are different seats we use for different models, have like a single mold rather than different products within that mold, so that you're not having to break apart different things at the end.
Right.
It's just one singular product. So there's just so many things that we're doing. Really, so we have the Precept, Polestar Precept, which will be our Polestar 5, and we also have the electric Roadster, which will be our Polestar 6. They have both been our concept cars for sustainability, and just showing, everyone and showing ourselves, we want to get to a zero emissions car or a climate neutral car. This is what it looks like. Yep. This is what we can build into it. And we've gone out there and shown people, because if it's exciting, people take notice.
Yeah.
So it's really sort of just shows people what we're capable of, but it gives us a sort of a guiding light and says, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, so you can sort of plan, like if you sort of aim or produce that now, you've got something, okay, well, that's what I've got to do to get the cars to that point. I've got to find more of these materials. I've got to, systematize it all.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I guess another thing that's different, we do quite a lot of work in the automotive industry, and Polestar does a few things differently from other car companies in Australia. One of which is you sell your cars online, and you sell them directly to the customer. So can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, why you do that and how that all works and how it stacks up? I mean, you've seen the other side of it as well, obviously with the dealers.
Yeah, and just, I was talking before about the drivers of sustainability. The last one is inclusion. And part of that, apart from looking after everyone in your supply chain, is treating everyone fairly and equally. And when we talk about selling online, when you buy online, no one knows who you are, whether you're what gender you are, whether you're in tracksuit pants or a suit, what watch you wear, or anything else. So there's no bias. There's no difference in pricing on the, when you buy the car or when you're going for finance. It's who you are in that transaction. It's not going into a location where someone makes an assumption of who you are and, yes, I can get more money out of you or less or anything like that. So it's really about, not having any biases there. It's just straight. This is the price. This is how you buy it. And you could do that on your own. Some people want to just go online and not be bothered. But some people want to talk to people. They want to look at the car. They want to test drive. They want that whole experience. So they can still come into our retail locations and talk to anyone, and have a good chat, talk to them about the car, about any of the technicals or what it's like to drive, what does it mean to be an EV owner, and understanding what that journey is. So people have got the choice to in person, or they can just buy online. And, you've got your web chat, you've got emails. You can also get on the phone and talk to our customer care centre. They're here in Ballarat, here in Australia. Lovely people, very grounded. So, and they've been so helpful to so many customers. We get very good feedback on how they help people. So it's a very personalised experience. So it's a non-negotiable pricing online. It's very much, you do it when you want, how you want. But very personalised approach to, looking after customers and making sure that we're helping them on that journey.
Terrific. And do you have sort of goals? I'm sure you do, goals about where you want the business to be in Australia, sort of short, medium, long term? Like, what's the vision for Polestar in Australia?
Well, I think we're moving towards being, a more luxurious brand in the products that we're bringing into Australia in the future. And we want to be the most sustainable luxury brand. I would say at the moment that we are the most sustainable luxury auto brand, probably even auto brand, full stop. But what we want to be is the most sustainable luxury brand. So that's a really strong direction for us. And we are working with a lot of different partners, events. We are very much involved in the circularity, sustainability, I'm not sure if it's community, probably what I would say. We have some very good partners. We're working with Sam Elson from Sea Forest. We've just brought him on board as our ambassador. And we're working with others, partnering with others as well, that are all on the same kind of journey. And that's really powerful at the moment because we need to do a lot more than what we're doing now. So the more people that really, push that story and really get out there to other people and influence others that they need to do more quickly, that's where we're going to have change coming. And we've been very involved in this National Electric Vehicle strategy consultation paper with our auto industry groups, and also individually providing our feedback on what's needed to accelerate the growth to more sustainable mobility.
Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, the EV market in Australia is still quite new compared to other markets. And I think, Tesla's been around for quite a while now, but they haven't really had any real competitors until recently. So how will Polestar and other similar, electric vehicle brands compete and catch up, after such a big start from Tesla?
Well, I think they have helped lead the way. They've done a good job because it's about bringing more EVs to Australia, not even just individual brands. I mean, we need to get more sustainable vehicles on our roads. Transport is about 18% of emissions. Passenger vehicles are probably about half of that, so a lot needs to be done. We welcome the other competition coming in, and I think when you have more coming in, there are a few brands that are already starting to deliver now higher volumes, and consumers are moving to those brands because they want choice. Not everyone wants the same thing, so people will want different values, different performance, different interiors, different look. And for Polestar, we've got more demand than what we can get supply at the moment, and it's not because we're short of supply. It's just it demands more than what anyone's expected over time. So, and that's really healthy. So I think yes, there's a lot more competition coming in, but there's also a lot more people are feeling more comfortable moving to EVs, and there's a lot being done. There's a lot of growth in charging stations being put online. That's expanding quite rapidly. There's federal, state, local governments, businesses, shopping centres, hotels. Everyone is putting chargers in place. You've got the road, the motoring associations, NRMA, RAC. They're all putting in charging stations in partnership with some of these other companies. So, so it's exciting. It could be exciting to see what happens over the next couple of years. And I think it's a matter of the government having the right, well thought out policies to really promote sustainable mobility. And if they do all of those right things, we should see more supply coming in as well.
And I think people probably tend to, compare Polestar to Tesla, but I think you made recent comments about Polestar being more like Porsche rather than Tesla. Could you explain what you mean by that a little bit?
Well, I think the Polestar 2 has come in and been quite a competitor with the Tesla 3 model, but with our newer models that will be coming out, the Polestar 3 and Polestar 4 onwards, they're going to be at a next level of luxury. So we really are going to be at a very different level. I think consumers that are coming into our brand will be looking for something a bit more than what they'll get with some of the other brands. So that's where we really are moving to a different space.
And I mean, in terms of the electric vehicle industry itself, where are we at with electric vehicles in Australia? What do you think can be done to increase that uptake further? Because obviously the focus is on uptake generally. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, Australia, we're only probably nearly 3% EV versus new car sales, all new car sales. UK, at the end of last year, was around 14%. Norway, north of 80%. Norway has been working probably since the 90s with different policies, but for us, we are only now providing input into the policies that are needed in Australia. It started off with state governments putting different incentives, be it rebates, stamp duty, transit lane use, different things, but it's very different in every state, very different to administer in every state. So it's very difficult, confusing for consumers and very difficult for companies to administer. So this National Electric Vehicle Strategy, if everything is, the right policies that are adopted from that, it would be very good to see on the demand side, better incentives, more appropriate sort of taxation. There are some very good benefits out there at the moment with the FBT. Started or was retroactive for 1st of July this year on novated leases, and that's going to have a real impact. You also got import tax that's been taken away from companies that don't already have a free trade agreement in place. So that's benefits that are out there now, and there are these other statewide benefits there. But nationally, if we can have benefits that are sort of nationally consistent at levels that really take into account that the costs have increased over time, so those benefits, the thresholds need to increase as well. Road user benefits, transit lane use, parking, tolls, any kind of incentives that really help people to say, all right, well, it's more beneficial for me financially, or a road user benefit to get into an EV. On the infrastructure side, you need the charging stations to be rolled out, which is all happening now, but we need that to happen at a faster rate. And it's not just a matter of rolling out chargers. You need to have the energy infrastructure that can go to like rural, for example? How do you get the energy out to these rural charging stations and the cost of that, the business case, versus doing it in metro areas? So you need to have all the metro that's going to help look after all the people live in apartments and what have you, and the day-to-day running around. People who are in their homes can use charging at home. But so there is a lot to be rolled out from the charging infrastructure and good maintenance of the chargers. The energy infrastructure to get to that, and renewable energy where possible, that's going to be happening. So you've got the demand side, you've got the infrastructure side, but then you've got the supply side who really need fuel efficiency standards to be put in place. Because at the moment, UK, I think it's only ourselves and Russia that don't have these standards in place. So if you're sending a manufacturer and you're sending a batch of cars to the UK, if they go over the batch of cars go over the CO2 thresholds, then you're penalised, and can be like $15,000 per car. So it's quite a lot. Australia doesn't have those. So you're going to send your dirtiest cars. Yeah, you're going to get the worst cars and the dirtiest fuel in Australia. Because we don't have any penalties for otherwise, which is a really bad position to be in, especially for Australia. We're supposed to be the land of plenty, the environmental and the great outdoors, and we've got the worst environmental policies when it comes to motor vehicles. So, but this National Electric Vehicle Strategy, the input has been given back from the consultation paper. We're now waiting on, those policies to come out, and there are a lot of different inputs. So the government, if they come out with well thought out policies, that's definitely going to drive EV sales and supplies. But it just depends on how that comes out and how soon it happens as well. The sooner it happens, the sooner you're going to get more people having the confidence to move into EVs, and manufacturers having the confidence to send EVs to Australia.
Yeah, it looks like there's still a lot of work to do in space.
There is indeed.
So what do you see as the future of the automotive industry?
Well, I think those who are lucky can move to EVs at a faster rate. We're very fortunate that we've moved there straight away. That's our number one done. We don't do sell anything other than EVs. But others are coming on the journey, and we hope we're influencing them to come on board faster. I think there have been some in the industry who have not made the right decisions in the past that are now having to rethink their strategy on what they're doing. So we're seeing some of that happening, which is good. They are, changing their plans. But it's a slow moving ship. That auto manufacturing is not something you can just switch over overnight. So it's a matter of having very clear targets. And if you have targets and say this is when we're going to full EVs by this time, then people will make that change. But if you don't have any targets in place, like UK do, Norway do, others do, then that change is going to happen at a very slow rate. So I think you need to have a commitment to it for the manufacturers to be able to plan to that. Otherwise, they will just keep making these fossil fuel cars and
doing all going down the easier path.
Yes, yeah.
So I guess the podcast is called Legally Consumed, so we do need to ask you a question about legal things. So you talked before about nationally consistent benefits for the use of EVs, I guess. What have been some of the biggest regulatory and legal challenges since you've launched in Australia?
I think the disparity between the different states in how you set up licensing, so becoming a dealer in itself was very difficult because there's different rules in different states. There's TAFE courses you have to do in some and yard managers courses in others. Even though you're not out there selling cars, you're in a corporate office and you have a full team who do a lot of that kind of work. And
there's no yard.
And there is no yard. So some of the legislation and some of the practices are decades old and really need to catch up and be nationally consistent to make it easier. Some are so easy and others are not. So setting up, dealer licenses in each state, registrations in each state as well, to be able to register cars, that can be very difficult as well. Some states easier than others. But so these things you think are going to be very easy can be very drawn out. So just a national approach to everything would be much easier. Just for businesses to navigate and to be able to be more nimble and to set up faster and more easily.
Make it easier for the lawyers as well. Although thinking about what happened during COVID and the way each state and territory just did their entirely their own thing, it doesn't give you a lot of hope that we'll get there. But you never know. It's nice to think of. I guess just to finish off, if you could change one law, if you were the Prime Minister of Australia for the day, Prime Minister Johnson, and you could, what would be the first thing you'd change?
Well, I'd like to go back in time and probably 20 years ago, put this national electric vehicle strategy in place 20 years ago, so it wouldn't be where we are now. That is something I would like to do. If there was a portal, I could like to go back in time. But I think nationalising a lot of what we're doing in that space and having a national approach to it, which it seems like we are now, I think that's the most important thing, and making sure that we, do consider the environment as a first priority. Yes, economics are very important, but there's no use having economics if there's no environment. We've got weather disasters happening everywhere around us already. And that's now. What's it going to be like in 5 years' time and 10 years' time? So let's take it seriously and make those changes and be tough about it and make them ambitious. We don't know how to make a zero emission or climate neutral car, but we put in stone and we said we're going to do it. And we're on the path. We've got partners in place. We actually are moving towards that. But if we hadn't put that goal in place, we wouldn't be where we are now. So you have to put those hard targets in place, and you have to pull everyone together and say, right, understand everything, how it all works. Let's do this, and let's be ambitious about it, and not do it at a comfortable pace. Let's do it at a pace that everyone needs to work towards.
All sounds very sensible to me. And on that note, thank you, Samantha. And we're looking forward to watching Polestar's journey in Australia. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Legally Consumed, a consumer products podcast by the Consumer Products Law Firm. This was presented by Raf Goldenberg, Kay Ho, and Will McMinn from CIE Legal. Our theme song is by our very own CIE Legal house band, which is comprised of Will McMinn, Andrew Marr, and Andrew Thompson.
This podcast production is in partnership with Social Star.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure you follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. For more updates and behind-the-scenes footage, head to our Instagram at CIE Legal, all one word. You can also check out our website to listen to a range of episodes and find additional free information at www.cielegal.com.au. To get in contact with CIE Legal about consumer products legal services, reach out to us on info@cielegal.com.au. Thanks again for listening to Legally Consumed, and see you all in the next episode.